This episode's surprisingly funny. Welcome to Ranger Reviews, a web series we look at episodes of the TV show Power Rangers then discuss them. Today we're exploring the 29th episode of the show Power Rangers Turbo, as well as the 234th episode overall, titled Clash of the Megazords. We begin this episode in the Power Chamber, where the Rangers say they can't find the space base anywhere. Demetria warns that they have to get the Power Ruby back right away. TJ calls Carlos, and TJ and Cassie are actually out in the wild, saying that they're right over the Phantom's access tunnel. Kinky. They get teleported down, walking around, but there's nothing according to the Turbo Navigator. But then actually just something comes up saying it's right up ahead. It's the Phantom Ranger's spaceship, and they see the Phantom Ranger is collapsed on the ground. They run over and Cassie is afraid he's not alive. On the space base, Divatox is screaming at Porto, asking when the Turbo Megazord is going to be ready. Porto says soon, and Divatox waxes poetic about how the Rangers will die now. But Elgar points out that the Rescue Zords are really cool, so Divatox is going to combine the Rangers' powers with the Power Ruby to win. In the Power Chamber, Phantom Ranger is laying down, and the Rangers are there hearing from Demetria how there's not much they can do without the Power Ruby. TJ then says they need to find the space base, but Carlos points out they actually know where it's at, they just have the shields up. TJ says if they can't get there, they'll bring her here, and Justin suggests a magnet. They're going to monitor the shields around the space base, and as soon as they go down, they're going to use a magnet. Shift in the turbo. In space, we see a Piranhatron install the Power Ruby into a big battery that gets lowered onto the front of the Turbo Megazord. I guess is how they're combining the powers. Divatox is so excited for this because she'll be watching Megazord vs. Megazord live. We see that TJ is flying around in Lightning Cruiser. He's talking to the others who have a big magnet set up with Storm Blaster somehow. TJ then shows up now with Cassie, and they're apparently setting up the Lightning Cruiser too, using their power to energize this magnet. Divatox is excited to find out that the batteries are fully charged, and she commands that they send down the Turbo Megazord. The Rangers say they're almost ready, but then Alpha calls, saying that the shields are lowering, so there's no time for testing. Feels like Billy's back on this show. They just use the magnet anyways. Everything in the space base is now getting in one direction, and honestly, this is the craziest things the Rangers have probably ever done. Divatox fires at them, and they realize they must have them. Now a bunch of stuff is flying around the space base, and Porto introduces the Metal Mangler, a new monster, who is then just pulled out of the space base with the laser getting sucked out. That's literally the end of that monster. Seriously, it's amazing. Porto says, what about this guy, Crosspatch? He immediately goes down with the Piranhatrons. They decide to go after the big magnet, but the Rangers are fighting them off. That is, until a Piranhatron gets through, turning off the magnet, much to Divatox's relief. She starts to give an order, but then it gets turned back on, and we see that Cassie got it back up and running. Crosspatch now takes on Cassie, getting her away, and he gets to the magnet, headbutting it, and destroying it. Porto says that Megazord's still ready to launch, so he does. Crosspatch then runs away, and the Rangers lament that it's going to take a while to fix it. Alpha then tells them to forget it because a giant object is heading toward Angel Grove. They have to move out. In the city, the Turbo Megazord lands, and we see inside its Crosspatch and 4 different colored chromites piloting the thing. Justin points out that there's giant batteries on the Megazord, and Alpha says he'll keep working on trying to figure out what those batteries do. Until then, they need the Rescue Zords, forming the Rescue Megazord in a seriously drawn out process. It's almost impressive. The two talk smack, and Crosspatch just mentions how they're using the Power Ruby to actually power themselves, which feels like something he could have just, not said. Carlos says they need to knock it out of commission first, and then get the Ruby back. In the Power Chamber, Alpha tells them to calm down because if they destroy the Ruby, they'll kill Phantom. He almost has the location of the Ruby locked. Divatox then yells at Crosspatch to attack, but he says he's waiting for the batteries to recharge. Then the Megazords start to stare at each other. Riveting content. Alpha then finds out that the Ruby's on top of the power pack, but the Turbo Megazord fires at them, and now it's truly Megazord versus Megazord in a sunset battle. TJ then takes off his seatbelt, saying he's got to go get the Ruby, and he says he's going to use the Lightning Cruiser to get the Ruby back. And Justin offers to help, but TJ says no, and this is when things are clearly not matching up from Japan to the US. Since when is TJ this brave vigilante? He leaves, but then they get hit by the Turbo Megazord anyways. TJ is driving around in the Lightning Cruiser on the ground, and I feel like he could have just flown a lot closer by now. The Rescue Megazord is pinned to the ground, and the Turbo Megazord gets ready to cut them in this seizure-inducing amount of jump cuts. Luckily, here comes TJ jumping out of the Lightning Cruiser and getting into the cockpit of the Turbo Megazord. He defends himself, and then he gets down onto the top of the battery pack, getting ready to get the Ruby. But here comes Crosspatch, and now it's a duel on top of the battery pack. This is awesome. The way this is shot as a combination of far and close shots is incredible. The other Rangers are watching as TJ fights Crosspatch, eventually hitting him back off the pack. TJ gets the Ruby back and he fires the battery pack, removing it from the Megazord, and it falls onto the ground, making Crosspatch explode. What? The Turbo Megazord is now back in their control, and TJ talks about how they were just pretending to be helpless against the Turbo Megazord, and Carlos is like, yeah, we were just pretending. There's a lot more nuance in this dialogue than I would expect from Power Rangers in general, but especially Turbo. On the space base, Divatox is pissed that they just lost control of the Turbo Megazord, so she demands that they fire the torpedoes. Okay, didn't see that coming. Crosspatch grows giant and he immediately gets punched in the face by the rescue Megazord. Well then. They keep fighting, and honestly, this is pretty nice to see a quick little Megazord fight, even if it's totally unnecessary at this point. They get the cannons from their Zord Bay blowing up Crosspatch. In the power chamber, the Rangers rush in and Cassie replaces the ruby in Phantom Ranger's chest, but nothing happens at first, and the Rangers just stare. Then it glows and the Phantom wakes up very slowly. He sits up and he says thank you to just Cassie. Screw everyone else, I guess. Then Phantom goes to leave and Cassie begs him to stay, but Phantom says he'll always remember her, but like, bye. He then says that he sees them as Earth's protectors. No shit. He then just leaves as Cassie stares on. The end. So yeah, that's it for the Phantom Ranger and Power Rangers Turbo. Seriously, he's not around again at all. Why they introduced him in the first place is a legitimate question at this point because he was around for 7 episodes. I don't get it. This episode itself is pretty good, especially for someone like me who genuinely doesn't enjoy Megazord fights. The only really unnecessary part of this episode was that long, drawn-out Zord summoning sequence, and also the last battle against Crosspatch as a giant monster. Everything else actually flowed really nicely, and there were surprise bits of comedy sprinkled throughout the entire episode. So next time, things are about to get really weird again, and possibly terrible, but until then, may the power protect you.